what's the protocol as far as the arrival of flights? I'm wondering sometimes if I see the fire tender always going toward the end of the runway. Is that just a myth, or is it a thought that probably I've made some disconnect somewhere?
Say that again.
Do you have a protocol where every flight should be met, or there should be a fire tender on standby? Is that part of the protocol?
Yes, of course. We're always on standby. And especially when an aircraft is inbound and it's clear to land and it's about to land at the airport here, we have to board our appliances and be on standby, be on high alert, should in case something were to go wrong, we are already in a state of readiness to respond.
Okay. And let's go back to Union Island. Abdon, so there's just one petrol station on the island, and there was that explosion. What have people's responses been? I know there is the mourning and there's a grief because you've lost your loved ones, but generally, what are people now saying? Have you sensed that there are lessons learned?
To be totally honest with you, I really don't think so. I think we have moved backwards a bit. You living on a Grenadian island where sometimes you're marginalized for one reason or the other. We were at a stage where persons were bringing gas, for example, from Carriacou or from St. Vincent or Canawan in drums. And now we have gone back to that stage. There's another gas station on the island. It's a clandestine gas station. And we're glad for the service, yes. But if there was to be an explosion at that one, I believe matters would even be worse. Because at the gas station that exploded, there was a tank that, because of the makeup of the tank, it did not blow. And most persons know they're actually storing gas in drums or in these black tanks. That is how we are getting by now. And I know moving forward, if there's anyone putting in a gas station again, like you know, they will have to go through some very strict and rigorous procedures in ensuring that you know proper safety measures are in place. But the way our persons are dealing with fuel and dealing with gas now, I do not get this sense. I'm being totally honest with you. I do not get this sense that we have really learned from what took place, because that was a fire that could have actually destroyed the entire town if it wasn't for persons, local volunteers that actually came out and prevented the fire from spreading. And I think the situation is actually, you know, sad to say, but it's actually worse now.
All right. Mr. Archer, let's see if we could hone in a little bit on fire safety protocols relevant to gas stations, and then we'll cross over and we'll go to the two officers again from the Royal Grenada Police Force. What are some of the things you would like people who go to fuel stations to be mindful of?
First thing, people need to understand that the fuel itself is not what causes the fire, but it's the vapors that come off of the fuel is what ignites and causes the fires to start and escalate based on the amount of vapors that are there. So I think that first and foremost, people need to understand that when they come to a service station and you ask to turn off the engine of your vehicle, it's not because we are mean people or we just want to get you upset, but it's actually for your own safety and the safety of the attendants in the immediate vicinity, and then persons, passerbys that can be passing by the station at that same time as well, that you're going to be fueled. Okay, so I will repeat. The most important thing with the fuels is actually the vapors that are emitted, and it's those vapors. And as the counterpart from St. Vincent was saying, union. Actually, what we understand would have happened on the island there is that there was an overfill of the tanks that were being filled. And normally, when you fill in tanks, there are vents that will cause the vapors to be emitted high above the ground. But once you have an overfill and it starts running on the ground, the vapors are right there in the vicinity, and any spark at all, whether it's from a match, whether it's from an intrinsic camera or phone, anything that could, and people need to understand the cell phones as well. The cell phones have buttons. You may not see any danger inside the cell phone, but you have moving parts. And static electricity is a killer that we don't see. Okay, when you rub the parts, you press the buttons in the phone, it gives off static electricity that can then ignite those vapors that we speak about. So we have to be fully aware and understand our environment. And, we keep fire extinguishers on the forecourts in the stations as a deterrent. But again, depending on the size of fires, then we have to call the sergeant and the inspector to help us out, because obviously it gets to a magnitude that's hard to control. So I would start there, Mrs. Campbell, by indicating that it's very important that people understand, what actually causes the ignition for the fires to start.
Some people are already debunking the claim, and they're saying that those are myths with regards to the use of the cell phone. We'll get back to that, but I always like to try to facilitate the questions. And earlier, somebody's asking you to point out how far you should stay behind when driving behind a gas truck. We call it gas trucks in Grenada.
Well, I think it's clearly posted that there's a 100-foot distance that's actually labeled on the back of the trucks.
So it's and why is that so?
Again, the trucks in their passageway they can also emit vapors, because you basically have a moving tank. Okay, vehicles have hot parts. The mufflers, the brakes, other parts of the vehicles can get hot. And as I was explaining, it's the vapors from the fuel that would ignite. So if you get too close to the trucks, or also if the truck, God forbid, has an incident, you don't want to be that close that you yourself may run into the back of the truck and create another hazard. So that is why it is recommended for the safe distance from the trucks.
All right. Sergeant Panchoo, we want to explore with you the experience of the fire department, let's say the last 6 months, because I think since late November, early December, there were these spate of fires, and we see they continue unabated, today being the most recent episode. And what is the thought process or the conversation taking place at the RGPF Fire Department in terms of homeowners and property owners trying to prevent fires? And if a fire does occur, some of the protocols you'd like to have observed?
Okay, so let me put on record that the fire department has been engaged in a very proactive manner as it relates to fire safety. We have been putting on a number of fire prevention initiatives. Some of these include lectures in schools, media programs, we hear on Beyond the Headlines now, we have been going to a number of radio station and television programs, sending out information. The truth about it is that in a lot of instances, we are speaking to the converted. I would have seen maybe a year or so ago, we would have held some community forums. And when we go to these community forums, or even laying the foundation for these community forums, we will go out with public address system, pass out flyers and so forth, asking persons to come out to the various community centers, schools and so forth to get information as it relates to fire safety. And when you do go out there, in most instances, the persons that you would meet is persons of the Disaster Management Authority, fellow police officers, and in some instances, the elderly persons who are already fire safety conscious. So in a lot of the times we are speaking to the converted. A lot of the times persons, when they see a police officer, whether it be somebody from the fire department or any other branch of the RGPF, come on the television or they hear their voice come on the radio, a lot of the times persons turn them off and go to another station. And I think that persons need to start to be more safety conscious. And that's the reality of it. Now, Mr. Archer was speaking a lot about the vapor, and the vapor is the fuel in this fire triangle. And this is something that we need persons to understand. The whole aspect of the fire triangle. In order for there to be any fire, you must have three elements present, and thus we have the fire triangle. We must have oxygen or air, we must have fuel, and we must have an ignition source. In most instances and in most environments, you will have fuel, that is anything that can burn. Whether it be the vapor Mr. Archer was speaking about from the gasoline or diesel or so forth, or it can be paper, wood, clothing, you have fuel present. In most common residents, we have houses built of wood, so you have fuel there. You have oxygen because we need oxygen to breathe. So there would be that two element of the fire triangle. So what we need to do is try to eliminate that heat element of the fire triangle, that ignition source. And that is why when we go out there, we speak so much to persons, putting away matches, and showing that your electrical installation is done by a qualified electrician. And these are the things that we want to send out there. Let persons bear in mind that the ignition source, when Mr. Archer asks someone to don't use a cell phone in a service station, when he asks you to turn off your vehicle in the service station, it's because he's taking away the heat element, the ignition element from that fire triangle. And he spoke about static electricity, he spoke about the phone. Static electricity can also come from clothing. Sometimes you wear certain clothing, and if you pass, and the clothing will actually raise the hair on your hands and so forth. Still clothing. And when you brush against your car seat coming out of your vehicle, you have static electricity. A lot of persons don't think about that. And one of the ways you can actually rule out that static electricity, your clothing rushing that seat, is ensuring that you touch a metal part in your vehicle before getting out. So I want persons to bear that in mind, especially when it comes to service station. But persons need to bear in mind the fire triangle. As I said, there's always fuel, there's always air, there's always oxygen. But the ignition source, that is the main component that we need to bear in mind, whether it be within our personal space, within our residence, or whether it be in a working environment. We need to pay particular attention to the heat element, whether it be in a storeroom, you ensure that you do not park items very close to light fixtures, because light fixtures give off heat, and after a period of time, you would break down those elements that you store within your storeroom, and you can have a fire resulting in that. Persons leave on lights 24/7, right through the week, those things give off heat, and it would actually break down elements from combustible materials, and you can see a fire resulting from that. What we would continue in our vein as it relates to fire prevention, going out there and speak to persons. One of our latest initiatives was going out to the school, but with the advent of COVID, we were not able to complete it. And we actually have some posters at the fire station presently at fire headquarters that we intend to go out to schools to put in each school with some fire safety tips, because we believe that if it starts at that stage, and a lot of the times I go out and I meet persons and they said, you're Sergeant Panchoo, my daughter said you came to the school, you came and do an evacuation drill. She's always behind me. Don't leave the fan on. Don't leave this on. You know, those simple things, when you live in the house, ensure that you turn off all electrical appliances, with the exception of the refrigerator in most instances. But these are the simple things that persons need to bear in mind. And at the end of the day, I believe that we can actually be more fire safety conscious within our tri-island state. Thanks a lot. Inspector
St. Paul, as far as the protocols at the airport is concerned, people who traverse the airport, whether as passengers or you probably are picking up people. What are some of the things you'd like people to be mindful of and not take for granted anymore? You want a new start going forward?
Well, we have realized at the airport that a lot of these persons, even employees at the airport, that are employed directly with the Grenada Airport authorities and other concessionaries that operates at the airport, we have realized that they are not fully conscious and aware of the dangers of fires and so on. So as a result, we had put together a program, a fire safety training program, and we have involved several persons. We had run that program for 1 straight month, and we tried to get as much persons as possible to be part of that fire safety training program, awareness program. We did fire safety training and the use of portable extinguishers. And during that training, at the end of every session, we always encourage persons to practice safety at their homes, their workplaces. Use the extinguisher correctly. Do not take the extinguisher and use it as though jams and so on. We also encourage persons, as Sergeant Panchoo said, to ask us for help and guidance in preparing a fire safety plan for their homes. And that would help, and that would ease, that would eliminate some of the unpleasantness and the unfriendly fires that normally takes place. I would just like to endorse what Mr. Archer and Sergeant Panchoo said a while ago. A number of things can cause fires, and you see, static electricity, that is something that we does not see or feel until it happens. So we have to be mindful of that. Bonding, as Sergeant Panchoo said, you live in your vehicle, always hold on to a metal part of the vehicle when you're exiting. So you bond it, so you don't go out with that charges on
you. Sometimes that we take for granted, and we will come back and have some more discussions with our panelists, especially with Mr. Archer, to take us through a drill, probably if possible, and we will try to see what we can do to make our homes fireproof or to take preventive measures. This is Beyond the Headlines on GBN Television, and to let you know that we'll also be opening the phone lines when we come back, because we always try to ensure that we entertain as many calls and concerns from members of the public as possible. So do stay with us. When we come back, we will be taking your phone calls to our panelists. A reminder that we have officials from the Royal Grenada Police Force, Mr. Charles Archer of Rubis and Abdon Whyte out of Union Island, where recently we had a tragic incident with 3 people succumbing to injuries sustained during a gas station explosion. Beyond the Headlines on GBN Television. Stay with us.
It's what's inside that counts. Inside your house, that is. With Beacon, you can ensure everything inside your home with our Easy Buy contents packages. Just click, match, and buy for maximum peace of mind with minimum fuss. Log on to beacon.co.tt and choose your package today.
Total is one of the world's largest oil companies with a top quality line of lubricants. Total Lubricants has a full product line from passenger cars, motorcycle, heavy industrial equipment, mining, trucking, agriculture, and manufacturing machines and vehicles. Total Lubricants, winning championships in motorsports, including Formula One and World Rally Championships. Total Lubricants are available at all Rubis service stations, leading automotive shops, and distributed by Huggins.
How going on, boy?
Hey, good old things.
Hey, Daisy.
Yeah.
Boy, in line, boy. Your house looking a real good day.
Boy, it's thanks to the hard-working and professional staff at the Housing Authority of Grenada. They handled me real nice. They did my plan, they did the construction, and I didn't even have to worry about a thing. They were there with me every step of the way, supervising the job, asking me about my concerns, giving me feedback as the house took shape. They were there from start to finish, and even put the keys in the palm of my hand. I give them an A++ for customer service.
Oh, it's people from housing bad, boy.
Boy, not bad. Excellent. If you're thinking about constructing your home, why not consult the Housing Authority of Grenada? You could visit them right down in the Sandino complex, or give them a call, 440-1015 or 440-1016. Or check out their website, hag473.com. They go handle you. They go jog your blocks, they go draw your plan, they go tote your materials. Hey man, where you going? The Housing Authority of Grenada is your choice for affordable housing and a stress-free construction experience.
Beyond the headlines, tonight we're discussing fire safety protocols, and we have with us Mr. Charles Archer, the country representative of Rubis in Grenada, Sergeant Adrian Panchoo, the head of operations at the Fire Department, Royal Grenada Police Force, Inspector John St.Paul, he's the head of the fire unit at the Morris Bishop International Airport, and we have Abdon Whyte out of Union Island, the National Emergency Management Organization in Union, where we had that unfortunate incident with 3 people succumbing to injuries sustained in a gas station explosion. Mr. Archer, we have callers who started to submit questions. 2 people called. They do not necessarily want to have their voice go across, but they've asked us to ask you 2 things. Why is it that the bus operators are always shaking the bus and sometimes jumping on the tire under the guise of trying to get more gas into the tanks? And before I forget, somebody else is asking, question for Mr. Archer. If the vapor is so dangerous, why do attendants always try to overfill your tank? Why aren't they trained to stop when the lever clicks off automatically? Mr. Archer, questions for you.
Both those 2 questions are related. So what the bus drivers are trying to do is actually try to squeeze every ounce of fuel into their fuel tank. And similarly, a lot of the attendants are actually doing that because the customers ask them to do that. That is a behavior that we've been trying to change for some time. And we actually get threats from customers when you don't do that for them. But the danger is, and it goes back to the same overfill situation, is that a tank is made with a certain capacity. And as you try to squeeze more and more fuel there, it replaces the space for air to safely circulate in the gas tanks. Now, that is actually something I was going to bring about. So I thank those 2 persons for those questions, because it is important even for passengers and buses to understand that actually it is not safe. And we have spoken with the busmen, we have spoken with the auto manufacturers, to the point where the auto manufacturers themselves had indicated that they have spoken to the busmen and indicated to them that if there are problems with their fuel tanks where the automatic shutoff does not work anymore, they do not guarantee or warranty those parts when there is overfilling. And what can happen is that persons that actually open, when you go to the service station, if you are aware, when you open your gas tank, you will hear like a poof, which is actually the air that has built up in the gas tank escaping. So it's very important that there is a limit to where the fuel is put into the vehicle to allow for the fuel in the tank to expand. Okay, if the more you eliminate that space, the greater you create capacity for an incident. So I trust that persons hearing me would understand, and I was indicating that persons in buses, if you are in a bus and the driver or the conductor or the person filling the bus is rocking the bus, that is what they're doing, and it's not a safe place for you to be inside the bus in case there is an incident. So we normally recommend, if that happens, that passengers get out the bus until the refueling of the bus is completed.
And Inspector St. Paul, should people be sitting in an aeroplane while it is being refueled?
Yes, that can happen.
Okay.
But as you speak about protocol, there is protocol, certain response protocol established. And once an aircraft has to be refueled with passengers on board, then we must have a forward deployed response vehicle, a rapid response vehicle, on standby at least 50 feet, 15 meters, 50 feet away, should in case any ignition take place.
So what is the protocol though? What am I to assume? That the airplanes are always refueled before the passengers get on?
That do happens at times, right? And there was a time you find airplanes refueling at nights, but what you find happening sometimes, because of the drop in temperature, condensation takes place, so you might find the air turning into, the moisture, it turns into water, and you'd have that condensation taking place, and you'd have the fuel having water in it. So they try to avoid that. One of the other things is that the time limit, the time an aircraft would have to spend on the ground, on the apron, and the time it's supposed to leave for the other destination. So having passengers fully disembarking and going back on board, that sometimes is time consuming. So to speed up operations, another thing is based on the number of aircraft that are being serviced at the time on the apron. And so all these factors have to be taken into consideration. However, though, there is the safety protocols that must be adhered to. And one of those is having persons, the ground handlers, and the people that are replenishing the aircraft with fuel be well trained in the use of the portable extinguishers and the fixed extinguishers on the ramps and aprons of the airports to take care for the initial attack, right? Initial intervention should in case something happens.
Okay.
There is a fire before the full complement of the crash fire and rescue unit respond to effectively manage such incidents.
Right. We have a caller on the line. Caller, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. I would like to know, and I think many other people would like to know, you talked about static electricity. I would want to know, let's say if the phones could start a fire at the airport, in the plane, inside the buses, or just say walking around the gas station, And I would like you to explain what you mean by, in your own words, static electricity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Archer?
Static electricity is what occurs when there are the rubbing of elements. It can be as simple as combing your hair, as was indicated by the fire gentleman earlier, the rubbing of your clothing. It is basically friction, between elements, and that friction based on your environment. If there is flammable material in that environment, in the air, you can set the air, ignite the air, and then it can get worse depending on your surrounding. I just want to indicate when Inspector St.Paul was speaking on the refueling of aircraft, just to indicate that, yes, that can happen and happen safely, but I think there's also a protocol where the passengers on board the plane are asked to undo their seatbelts in order to help faster evacuation if there is an incident. And I just want to transfer that actually over to the service station. The protocol at the service stations also is for persons that are refueling their vehicle to actually also undo their seat belts. And again, the reason for that is if there's an incident, you are reducing the amount of time that you are now looking to unfasten your seat belt in order to exit the vehicle. Some vehicles, the seat belts actually lock when you have an incident or when you tug on them too hard, and that could hinder your evacuation. So again, for persons to understand, they will see that actually on the warning list posted on the columns that you should, undo your seatbelt while the vehicle is being refueled. And to add another element on the static electricity, persons that come in on motorbikes, we normally ask them to actually get off the motorbikes while the motorbikes are being refueled. And that again sits with the static electricity situation where if you're sitting on the bike and you're moving around while it's being fueled, again, you can create the friction with your clothing on the leather seats or whatever type of seats you have. And again, the vapors coming off of the fuel situation where you can ignite. So all of these are either unknown to some customers or are known, but they're not adhered to. But all of these are things that are done for safety of you, the customer, at the stations.
Mr. Archer, it looks as though people are really, people have a lot of questions for you. I have a question here from someone on social media is asking, I'm concerned about the quality of cooking gas cylinders that are sold to consumers. Who is the competent authority for conducting inspection of those cylinders? Some of these cylinders are in a deplorable condition, especially the 20-pound ones.
Okay, well, speaking about condition by looking compared to condition based on the inspection on the actual cylinders, they are actually inspected every time they come to our terminal for refilling, and they are rejected accordingly. Again, they go through pressure tests, they go through refurbishment. So it's not just a matter that we recycle the cylinders without ensuring the safety of those cylinders. What I want customers to also understand is their own handling of cylinders, because cylinders have it is actually called LPG, and the L in there stands for liquid. Yes, you may get a gas coming out under pressure, but you first have to understand that in handling the cylinder, you have to be able to ensure you carry the cylinders properly. A lot of people just throw the cylinders into the vehicle, not recognizing that that's a liquid. We normally ask you to transport those 20-pound cylinders, because those are what you basically get at the stations. So you transport them standing up. When you put them to lie on the side, being a liquid, they try to obviously come out the vent at the top. Okay, so it is very important that when you're handling the cylinders, you also do that safely. Again, if you suspect that there is a leak, if trying to put soapy water in the area where you suspect the leak does not work, we suggest that you do not strike a match, but that you call the authorities and have the cylinder looked at by somebody that understands the process.
We have a couple more questions, but I want to go back to Abdon. Abdon, the case on Union Island, and this is a lot of information, it's causing me to think deeply. So we had this 2 youngsters and the gas station owner who were injured. People in the environs, because the gas station is right along the street, how did people escape the inferno?
Well, the explosion, it actually took place at the back of the gas station where the storage tanks were. So and at that time the gas station was actually closed. So based on that, everyone would have been on the main street, because in front of the gas station is a popular lineman spot. And so the only persons that were actually close to where the fuel was being stored were the 3 persons who got injured. But interestingly enough, I was listening to Mr. Archer, and he was speaking about static electricity and how the fumes, from the gas could help to ignite, And strangely enough is that when Lindani was at the hospital, my brother and my daughter, he was explaining to them how the fire started. And he said when the operator of the gas station actually turned on the searchlight, that is when the explosion occurred. So maybe just by, because it has batteries, and it was one of those big searchlight. So something probably ignited with all that gas and probably all that fume because the storage tanks, they were not underground. They were actually above ground. And they were stored in a galvanized shell. So it was an enclosed environment with a lot of gas, I believe, and a lot of fume. And I remember they saying that the youngster said that once he turned on the light, that is when the explosion occurred. And just listening to Mr. Archer tonight, it makes me believe more that probably that is what could have really caused the explosion. But in terms of persons getting away, once the explosion occurred, everyone started fleeing from the area. Eventually, the police came in, and they got out of the area at least 200 feet from the gas station in all directions, and traffic was not allowed to pass along the street behind of them. And so persons basically got out of the area very quickly because the explosion took place at the back of the gas station. Okay.
We'd like to follow up on another point, but we have a question here via the Facebook page for Officer Panchoo. Is it better to have your gas tank at home in an enclosed area? So the person said particularly this question is for Officer Panchoo. Can you assist us here?
Okay, well, for the best storage of LPG cylinders would be an area that is well ventilated. So normally persons would have it in their cupboards and so forth. That is not the proper place to keep your LPG cylinders. It should be in a well ventilated area so that at the end of the day, if you do have a leak, that they wouldn't have a buildup of that LPG, which can actually cause a fire. Mr. Whyte was speaking of the flashlight, And we normally tell persons, if you enter your home, let's imagine you came from work or so, and you enter your home, and you get the odor of LPG, or what you suspect to be LPG, do not turn on your lights. Because turning on the switch would cause a spark, which can cause ignition. So you want to ensure that you have those LPG cylinders in a very ventilated area. So the practice of having it in cupboards and so forth is not a safe practice.
And someone had a question about carrier coup, but I would have to try to go back on the feed to find it, because as the comments come in, the newer comments are there, and so I'm having a little difficulty. But it had to do with, one of the questions had to do with how many fire units tenders are available for Carriacou and PD Martinique, and something being with a fire and a flight, and they could not, the fire unit could not get to the fire. And I don't remember the rest, but I'll try to see if either person could post it again, or I'm trying to scroll back and I can't. So if you can do, basically tell us, Mr. Panchoo, how many fire tenders are available on the sister islands?
Okay, in Carriacou at present, we have one fire appliance, and that appliance services both domestic and aerodrome firefighting. Previously, we had two, but because of constraints and one of the appliances at the Maurice Bishop International Airport being unserviceable, that appliance that was there for solely aerodrome purpose had to be brought back down to the mainland. So presently, we have one serviceable appliance, and that appliance services both aerodrome and domestic. So you were speaking about someone speaking about a flight and the fire appliance having to leave. Really and truly, it comes down to what is burning. If we have a bushfire that poses no threat to anything, and we have a flight on the ground with passengers going onto that aircraft, the fire appliance, a decision would be made that the fire appliance would remain there to ensure that persons leave safely, the aircraft takes off safely, and then the personnel would proceed to the scene of that fire at present.
Okay. And Inspector St. Paul, with regard, okay, I was about to ask you a question, but he answered it. What happens is a protocol similar for the MVIA and Lauriston and Carriacou. You want to expand on that? Inspector St. Paul?
Well, it's the same, you know. It's the same. Like I had explained earlier, aerodrome firefighting is aerodrome firefighting. And most of the protocol, what you might find happening, the magnitude of or the amount of rules and so on, or guidelines to be followed, might differ a little because of the size of the airport and the flights that are accommodated at the airport at Carriacou, as compared to flights that are accommodated here. Because, you know, here it's an international airport, and we have a number of wide-body aircrafts frequenting this airport here, as compared to Carriacou, where you have just little islanders and little Cessnas and so on, you know. So it differs a little, but the whole principle in approach and everything as it relates to responding to aircraft incidents and emergencies and the safety in refueling aircraft, that must be followed at all times.
Okay. And we have a question here, Mr. Archer. I'm not certain if it looks like a riddle. Somebody's asking, which is easier for passengers to exit, a motor vehicle or an aeroplane? Mr. Archer? Sounds like a little riddle there.
Is that really for me to answer? I am sure that they have the answer themselves. Depends on where you are at the time and how you want to respond. But let me take the opportunity to also, and it's important that we understand to what Mr. Whyte was saying regarding the storage of product. A lot of times person come to the service stations with a container to get fuel. Okay, we need to understand again, safe containers and unsafe containers. We try to guide the public to let them know when they come with an unsafe container and that we cannot put fuel in them. Even worse is putting gasoline into these types of containers. Now, basically, besides aviation fuel, which the inspector will know. Gasoline is, for customers at stations, the most flammable of the fuels. A lot of times we try to buy gasoline, put them in unsuitable containers. Then when we get home, we store them inappropriately. Okay, you have fuel in a container is like putting a bomb in your house. The same way the vapors could escape from those containers. You're cooking in your kitchen, you have something else going on in your garage. You are creating unsafe environments. So we really want persons to understand, or you say that your vehicle run out of gasoline and you come with a container to get some gas to fill it back. We also see people come in with water bottle to put fuel in it. You say that is for your weed eater. But what happens with that container when you finish with it? You discard it, and we have people that go around that are collecting plastic bottles to recycle. What happens when you recycle one of those containers? Or you store them in an area where it could be flammable. Right? So we really have to be thinking of repercussions and not just to be self-serving when we want something to be done. So we understand the dangers that we are created when we use things inappropriately.
Okay. Mr. Archer, we have someone submitting a question on social media, but I understand we also have a call. I'll read the question and then we'll take the call first. If the use of cell phone buttons can cause static, is it safe to use the wireless card machine for payment, acknowledging that both wireless devices work similarly? But let's first take the caller on the line and then we'll go to this question. Caller, good evening.
Good evening. We know that a lot of people like smoking, and I think smoking with a cigarette can help to cause a fire, maybe in the home as well as in the gas station. Now, should a gas attendant ask someone to put off his phone, to put off his cigarette? Can the police, let's say, come in if he fails to do that and take him away, as you say, arrest him? If he does not want to comply with the gas attendant saying, I look at this thing as a serious thing.
All right, I think we got the point. Mr. Archer, cigarette smoking in gas stations.
Well, that is a no-no. I'm not certain what the caller thinks other than we would not serve that person. If there is a situation where that person is unruly, then I guess the inspector and the sergeant may be able to answer that aspect of it. But we will start off by not servicing that person, period.
Okay. And the question with regard to using the wireless machine for payment, Mr. Archer, you had some time to think about that?
Yeah, well, actually, I spoke to that already. I indicated, and then we would have heard when Mr. Whyte spoke about the flashlight. Okay, I mentioned about intricately safe devices. All right, so they are protected. These items that are made for use on forecourts are made in a way that they are protected so that the keys and so when they are pressed, they do not expose and create the static electricity that can be of danger to the users and to persons in the environment.
All right, thank you so much. This is Beyond the Headlines. We're dealing with fire safety protocols. We will be right back after this commercial break. Do stay with us.
It's what's inside that counts. Inside your house, that is. With Beacon, you can ensure everything inside your home with our Easy Buy contents packages. Just click, match, and buy for maximum peace of mind with minimum fuss. Log on to beacon.co.tt and choose your package today.
Total is one of the world's largest oil companies with a top quality line of lubricants. Total Lubricants has a full product line from passenger cars, motorcycle, heavy industrial equipment, mining, trucking, agriculture, and manufacturing machines and vehicles. Total Lubricants, winning championships in motorsports, including Formula One and World Rally Championships. Total Lubricants are available at all Rubis service stations, leading automotive shops, and distributed by Huggins.
I'm reaching my dreams with GOT. They're the ones for me. I'm reaching my dreams with GOT. They're the ones for me. Since 1983, they've been serving the country, and we like all their financing, giving the people what they want, what they need, what they love. Come and join the family that's here for you all the way, from birth to graduation, your first job to your home and your car through your golden years.
The GT Credit Union has been actively supporting nation building through its many sponsorships and programs, including Financial Literacy Quiz, Pass the Torch Calypso Program, Junior Cooperatives in Secondary Schools, CPEA, and the TAMCC Grants. The credit union has helped many people make their dreams come true. Let them help you with yours. You don't have to be a teacher to be a member. So what are you waiting for?
GUT Credit Union, it's where you belong.
Moms are always special. We give them teddies, hugs, kisses, chocolates, perfumes, and jewelry. All the softer things in life. But for Father's Day, Europa offers 15% discount off all machines store-wide. Come in and choose your favorite machine and instantly get 15% off. Walk in style and walk out with a smile. This Father's Day. Sale starts June 15th and ends June 20th. Europa. We service what we sell.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. We're looking at fire safety protocols this evening, and we have a question for Sergeant Panchoo, who's the head of the operations department at the Fire Department, Royal Grenada Police Force, head of operations. Sergeant Panchoo, somebody's asking, what are the dangers of leaving water in your vehicle, especially on hot days? Sergeant Panchoo?
I'm trying to understand in what context they are speaking about.
I was trying to figure that out as well, and I'm wondering if I may need to transpose the question for you, and instead of saying leaving water, probably leaving fuel. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I'm just wrapping my head around the question. I think it could be an issue. Someone might be thinking of the magnifying glass effect, with water and the sunlight going through it, hitting a spot and causing a fire, as same as discarding a glass bottle in the forest that can cause a fire. Now, I have not experienced, because besides being in charge of operation at fire headquarters, I'm also one of the trained fire investigators at the fire department, or within the fire department, and I have not observed or come across any fire which would have resulted in water being left, maybe in a bottle or so forth, discarded within a vehicle. So at present, I can't say that it is unsafe. However, this is something that I can actually research, because from time to time we go to fire scenes and you're not certain of what caused the fire, so the cause of the fire would have to be undetermined. So maybe if that person has some information that leaving a water bottle or a bottle with water can cause a fire, maybe that's something that I can actually look into.
Okay. And speaking of bottles, we have a call on the line, I'm sorry? We have a caller. I apologize. Caller, good evening.
Yes, good evening. I'm gathering something tonight. Is that, correct me, is there a different type of fires? And if there are different type of fires, do we have to have in our home the different types of fire extinguisher?
Okay, so yes, there are different types of fires. There are different classes of fires, actually, right? You have Class A fires, which are ordinary combustible fires, which involve fires involving paper, cloth, ordinary combustible, wood, and so forth. Right, so fires involving those things will be ordinary combustible, easily extinguished with water. We have Class B fires, which will be flammable liquids and would involve gasoline, paint, and those type of items. In most instances, the best extinguishing agent would be foam, but you can also use an ABC extinguisher. So most of the times, persons would purchase ABC potable extinguisher, which is dry powder. Right, you have Class C fires, which are electrically energized fires. So you have a fire involving an item that is still electrically energized, so you still have it plugged into an outlet or so forth. Such a fire, you would not be able to use water because you run the risk of being electrocuted and suffering a shock. So you want to ensure that. So we have different classes, right? So we want persons to bear that in mind. You have Class D fires, which is flammable metals. You hardly find those fires within a residence or so, but most of the times persons would tend to purchase an ABC extinguisher, which is an extinguisher that you can use on all the three classes of fire that I spoke about, A, B, and C. And also in most instances, as it relates to electrical fires, you can purchase a carbon dioxide extinguisher. So it depends on what you have in a room or so forth, you would determine what extinguisher you can use. And that is why members of the fire department assist entities as it relates to the proper placement of extinguishers. We also do have private contractors who also come out and do those things. So a person is setting up a new business, or within your home, you want a portable extinguisher, you can engage the fire department or some of these private contractors that can come in, do an inspection of your premises and look at the combustibles that you have present. So if you have a room, let's imagine a school that has a computer lab. In such an instance, the best extinguisher would be a carbon dioxide extinguisher. It's not to say that the ABC extinguisher would not be effective. However, when you have keyboards and so forth and you use an ABC extinguisher, which I said is a dry powder, the powder itself will get into the keyboard and you would have to spend a lot of money to actually clean those keyboards. So you use a carbon dioxide extinguisher, which would be effective on an electrical fire, but then you don't have that mess to clean up thereafter. So it all comes down to the combustibles that you have present, and that would determine which portable extinguisher would be best for you to have within your premises.
All right. Somebody's asking, if placing the gasoline in containers is so dangerous, then I suggest the sellers stop it. In case where the vehicles hold up for gas and someone is buying for weed eaters, etc., what containers would be deemed to be safe? And we have a similar question from another of the portals. For Mr. Archer, what are the best containers to put gas in to take away? Please give us some examples.
Well, as far as examples, these containers are sold at hardware stores, they're sold at gas stations. They attract the name of jerry can, but they're actually hard plastic. They're not flammable, and they're not able to be consumed by the chemicals in the fuel, but they are approved, and you can speak to any operator at any service station. They are approved fuel containers. Obviously, if you pick a water bottle or another type of bottle that just standing by the side and to use that, it is obviously not approved, and it's not even something that you should consider using.
All right, and Abdon, okay, let me ask the caller who's there to just be a little patient with us. Abdon, there was the offer of assistance from the government of Grenada to provide fuel. How has that been going? And I'm in my head following up on things that have been said. What are people collecting fuel in, for instance? No, you don't have a legit gas station according to you on the island right now.
No, we don't. As I said, persons have been going to Canawan, and some persons have been sending these plastic drums to St. Vincent. Since the fire, we had another tragedy in terms of, well, we didn't have any loss of lives, but the main boat that took cargo from Carriacou to Union Island sank while bringing cargo from Carriacou to Union Island, I think about a week ago.
Abdon, this is not something to be laughing at, and I hear the pain in your voice. How are you people dealing with these issues?
Yeah, because it's like one incident after the other, and luckily we're not in the tourists, because we're dealing with a serious drought on the island. We've just lost 3 lives. And then right after that, you have the main boat that goes from Carriacou to Union to bring. So a lot of persons lost cargo that evening. That was I believe it was the Mary J or Lady J, I can't remember exactly, of the boat. But as I said, in terms of the offer, persons were going down because there's a little bit more movement now between Union Island and Carriacou. But all of us here on the island, because we were wondering, how is that going to be done? I mean, yes, there's an offer, but how are we going to get the fuel? Who's going to bring the fuel? And what condition would the fuel be brought to Union Island in? Yes. And if that was the case, then it would have just been easier to get the fuel from St. Vincent. So it was a good gesture, to be honest with you, but it's really easier and safer to get fuel from St. Vincent in terms of transporting the fuel. But the storage on the island, we have returned back to storing fuel in plastic drums in sheds. And that, I mean, the other clandestine gas station is not too far from the secondary school. And I am really hoping and praying that we do not have another tragedy, to be honest with you, and something has to be done quickly to resolve the problem. If we were on St. Vincent, maybe we would not be faced because there are a lot more resources, but being the only gas station on the island, and luckily one of his tanks, I think it had a fiberglass coating, so that tank did not blow. And so that tank was designed to resist fire, I believe. But currently, just listening to the sergeant and the inspector, Mr. Archer, we have serious problems here. We have serious problems here.
We have serious problems here. Those are words that will ring in my ears for quite a while to come. And to members of the panel from this end of the Grenadine chain, we want to say thank you for having brought those issues to light as we get ready to wrap it up. But we have a caller who's been extremely patient. Caller, it's your show now.
Yes, good evening. Greetings to both guests and hosts. Listen, I want to throw this question out to the official from the airport firefighting and rescue services. Can you tell the nation, sir, if our international airport is adequately equipped with the appropriate rapid intervention vehicle with all the characteristics which you ought to know as established by International Civil Aviation Organization? And if not, why? Thank you.
Thank you. Inspector St.Paul?
Yes, in order to run and to operate an international airport, you must have a rapid intervention vehicle. And there is a rapid intervention vehicle present. Because we have a response time to meet. Once there is an emergency or aircraft experiencing problems and we have to respond to any emergency or so we must have a rapid intervention vehicle present at the airport. And we do have. Sometimes, the mechanics in vehicles, you might have a mechanical problem and the vehicle may go out of service for a couple hours, sometimes for a day, but we do have our contingency plan in place to take care of that. But we do have that. We have 2 major foam vehicles, and we have 2 small rapid intervention vehicles at the airport, stationed at the airport.
Thank you so much. And Inspector Panchoo, we have the person who asked the question about the water in the vehicle, thanking you for the answer and saying, please explore research because there is a school of thought on leaving water in your vehicle and the effects of sunlight on that water. So they're extending their thanks and urging you to continue the research. Gentlemen, we only have 2 minutes remaining, and I'd want to say thank you and offer 30 seconds, and we'll be keeping our eye on the buzzer because when we offer wrap-up comments, people go beyond 10 o'clock. So, eye on the buzzer. Our distinguished panelists from Union Island, we are starting the wrap-up with you tonight, extending our thanks to you. Abdon, what thoughts would you like to leave with your brothers and sisters from this end of the Grenadine chain?
Take whatever safety procedures or safety measures are in place. I just want persons to take them seriously, and persons setting up gas stations or storing gas, know what we're doing, follow the necessary guidelines, listen to the authorities, because it can cost lives. It definitely can cost lives.
Mr. Archer, what are your closing thoughts?
I want to indicate that it is very important that persons that heard us tonight try to share some of the information that they learned tonight with other persons in their family or around their villages, even at the workplace. Rubis spares no expense to ensure safety at our stations, do a lot of investment because lives are important, buildings can be replaced, but we provide training and we provide the surety to the public that our operations will always be safe at all times.
And Sergeant Panchoo?
Okay, let me just close by saying safety first, safety second, safety last. We want persons to bear that in mind. Prevention is always key. Yes, we have to put plans in place for response, but prevention is first. So I just want to leave this word safety first, safety second, safety last, and let persons bear in mind that we all need to work together to keep Grenada, Carriacou, Pitimatnik, and by extension, Union Island safe.
And Inspector St. Paul, the last word is yours.
Well, I would like to encourage the general public to take our fire prevention and public safety education program that we normally put out there, that we normally be on the television and radio stations, to take it and take it very serious, because that can minimize the loss of property and save lives. Thank you.
And I would like to thank the distinguished members of the panel for taking the time to speak with us this evening. It has been a learning experience for me, and from the feedback that we have received, indeed, it has been an eye-opener and very enlightening, and I'm certain at some point in the future we could revisit the subject. As we close tonight, we close with the good news that we got a little earlier and did carry in the newscast that the freedom of movement has been extended to 9 p.m. and the beach opening hours are now between 5 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Another 3 categories of businesses are allowed to open, including in-dining services at restaurants. So we continue to make progress, and we would like to wrap it up here for this evening. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Odette Campbell saying until next week, another edition of Beyond the Headlines. So long to Eugene Gittins, who has made tremendous contributions to the public discourse that we've had on at least 3 critical issues here in the past week and a half. We want to extend our sincerest thanks to you. Thanks, Gene. So long for now.